Thank you for joining us today for our webinar. You'll see there in the slide that will focus on transforming your future. And today would like to reflect a bit together on the benefits of sustainability for your career and organization. We believe that we have a word to say and something to add, hopefully, to this discussion with our program in our master program in global sustainability leadership. My name is Alexandra Severino. I'm part of the program team and the programs coordinator at the Online Learning and Education Unit, part of the Division for Peace at UNITAR, and closely involved with this program. And we have, as I was hinting at, a compelling agenda lined up for you today. We'll start with an introduction to our topic, and then we'll have a very exciting panel discussion with some of our distinguished experts here today, more about them in a bit. And we'll also share a bit of our scholarship opportunities close to the end. We had the previous webinar of the series focused more specifically on that, but we'll remind you of the options we have available. So our world is changing rapidly. And one of the silver linings of all the current change we have is that sustainability is no longer just a buzzword we use for everything, but we believe it's a critical component of successful careers and thriving organizations. And this is what we hope to convey today, make this very clear. With our panel discussion, we'll embrace how sustainable practices can propel your career forward and create positive impacts within your organization. So we hope to have representative of organizations here willing to embark with us in this journey. I'm really excited to hand over and to move to the panel discussion. So I'll introduce you to our moderator for today's reflection, Dr. John-Hans Kutzer. Alongside being the team leader of the unit I work for and dear colleague, Dr. Kutzer is a senior higher education leader with over 15 years of experience in higher educational, instructional and program management and design, as well as academic program management. Dr. Kutzer also served as a senior delegate of the International Committee of the Red Cross in more than 15 countries. And as I mentioned, he currently serves as team leader for the United Nations Institute for Training and Research for the program focused on online learning and higher education. His research interests include framing attuned leadership in the international classroom for positive change. And this is somehow also what our program are about. Without further ado, I'll hand over to you, John, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alexandra. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the next hour and to connect. And we invite you, please, to use the chat options to post some questions that you may have, because you're going to hear some really interesting insights from our panelists. But just before we move to ask our panelists to briefly introduce them, let me just set the context for the focus of our discussion. And I would like to draw on the words that was stated and used by the United Nations Secretary General on June the 5th, when scientists had confirmed that May 2024 was the hottest May in human history, making 12 straight months of the hottest months ever. Our planet is trying to tell us something, but we don't seem to be listening. To mark the World Environment Day, which was June the 5th, he gave a special address on the state of the climate crisis at the American Museum of Natural History. It's an iconic location that tells the story of our natural world and the vast forces that have shaped life on Earth over billions of years. Much like the meteor that wiped out the dinosaurs, humans are having an outsized impact on our planet. In the case of climate, We are not the dinosaurs, but we are the meteor. And we are not only in danger, we are the danger. But we are also the solution. And here is the real value of this program in sustainable leadership, because the ideas that we need to share in facing this world with proper and appropriate solutions. Because almost 10 years since the Paris Agreement was adopted, the target of limiting long-term global warming to 1.5% Celsius is hanging by a thin thread. Why all the fuss then about 1.5? Because every fraction of a degree of global heating counts. The difference between 1 to 5% and 2% Celsius could be the difference between the extinction and survival for some small island countries and coastal communities. It could be the difference between minimizing climate chaos and crossing the dangerous tipping point. So 1.5 is not a target. It is not a goal. It is a physical limit. And ladies and gentlemen, this is why it is so important to hear from our experts and the value proposition in how this program is able to assist future leaders, current managers in terms of what are those sustainable practices that they can adopt that is going to help us to find a solution to sustainable development. So without any further ado, I would kindly ask Ellie Sheridan to please introduce herself to us.
Thanks, John Hans, and thanks everyone for joining us today and for having me along. And I absolutely agree, you know, sustainability leadership has never been so important. And indeed, it's not just another thing we need to look at, it's the context within which everything else and all leadership is happening now in the context of the climate crisis and climate breakdown. So as John has mentioned, my name is Ali Sheridan and I'm based in Ireland. And I have worked in the area of climate and sustainability for over 15 years. I started off working with environmental organizations around the whole area of environmental education, but I always had an interest in industry and wanting to see how we could better mobilize industry towards sustainability action and indeed alleviate some of the harmful impacts that were coming across different sectors. So I spent a lot of years working in the food industry, an industry that is very vulnerable to climate change, which is at risk all around the world in terms of supply and harvest and the impact of drought and heat. I then worked in the tech sector, looking at issues around circular economy and electrical waste, and also in the energy sector as well, looking at community access and equity to energy as we make this huge jump to clean energy around the world. I spent a few years as the head of sustainability at IKEA in Ireland and across the UK as well, where we were looking at how to mobilize customers around sustainable living habits. How could we improve access to solar panels, make appliances more efficient, rent furniture, take it back, not always being having to make new furniture all the time, and really challenging that business model of fast furniture and working towards a much more closed loop system. And then in the last few years, I've shifted to working with policymakers and kind of industrial alliances and sectoral groups, again, about that mobilization that we now need, given we are in the late stages of the climate crisis. Some of that has been around supporting around a lot of the mandatory regulations that is coming in, but I've also spent some time with an initiative called the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty, which is working to get the world to agree on a timely phase out of fossil fuels, which we don't yet have in 2024, which is quite shocking given how close we are to that 1.5 red line. So I've also, on top of that, done a lot of lecturing, which I've really enjoyed, and I support different groups, including the Environmental Protection Agency in Ireland, in terms of acting as an advisor on different climate and nature groups. So I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Ali. It's a great pleasure to now give the word to Séin Ó Muineacháin.
Thanks, John Hans. Hello, everybody. My name is Séin Ó Muineacháin, and I am a researcher in the area of public policy with a particular focus on labour market and skills policy. I've been in that field for about 12, 13 years at this point. I started off as a policy advisor for the British Employers Association, the Confederation of British Industry, focusing on skills policy and public services more generally, and then moved to work as a senior consultant for ICF, working directly with governments, charities, public policy research organizations in their human and social capital practice. So working with the likes of the European Commission, the British Treasury, British Department of Education on building skills in the workforce. And my most recent installment of my career, I guess, has been as a research lead for LinkedIn up until the end of last year, where I was the main director of research for our policy partnerships with the World Economic Forum, the World Bank, the European Commission, the OECD, the European Central Bank, and so on, where we took information from LinkedIn data and LinkedIn profiles to use to collaborate with organizations around the world, understanding what was happening in real time in their workforces and how their labour markets were transforming over time. So the topics that I specifically focused on were in relation to women's participation in the workplace, specifically the leadership gap that we have with regard to men and women in the workforce at the moment, but also then looking at the proliferation of digital skills, the growth of AI, and particularly on point for this discussion today is the need, both in an increased demand, but also the need for an increased supply in the provision of green skills for the workforce as well today. So that's some of the areas that I'll be exploring later on. By way of background, I'm a trained political scientist and lectured for a number of years in Trinity College Dublin as well. Thank you.
You're on mute, John.
Thank you very much, Séin. Ladies and gentlemen, a pleasure now to give the word to Roxani Roushas.
Thank you, John Hans, and thanks so much to UNITAR and Technological University Dublin for the kind invitation to the webinar. Congratulations on launching this highly comprehensive and relevant MA program, and kudos to all the participants for their interest in the program as well. My name is Roxani Roushas. I work for the United Nations Development Program, UNDP. We're the largest UN agency working on sustainable development topics. We work across SDGs, and we're present in more than 170 countries and territories around the world. I specifically manage the Youth for Climate program, which is co-led by UNDP and the government of Italy. And we're happy to have UNITAR as one of our trusted knowledge partners on the Youth for Climate initiative as well. What we do is that we identify, amplify, support, and scale youth-led climate breakthroughs around the world, namely through funding opportunities. So last year, we launched our first call for solutions in areas like food and agriculture, energy, urban sustainability, climate education. We got in more than 1,100 youth-led solutions from around the world, and we've funded 50 teams across 39 countries with funds of up to $20,000 in that first round, $20,000 each, to implement their solutions. We've just closed this year's call. So we'll be funding another round of solutions this year with funds of up to $30,000. And we also have an online community of practice with about 14,000 members now, young climate leaders from around the world, where we're able to open up different opportunities. So I'll share the link to that in the chat in case you're interested to join us there. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Roxani. And then, ladies and gentlemen, finally, we really excited to have Begoña Otero present as well. Begoña was somebody who already, as much as 18 years ago, already started challenging and putting into the international research agendas the nexus between leadership, economic growth, and human well-being. Begoña, you have the word.
Thank you very much, John Hans, for the kind invitation, and Alexandra, UNITAR and Technological University Dublin for having me. I am the one who is humble and thanks for the nice introduction. So who I am, I mean, I really want to keep it very, very brief because the profiles of my co-panelists are quite impressive, and I think the central role should be on the program that it's been launched today. As Johan said, I've been fighting for ecological sustainability and how to put that in business and for quite some time already. But what I do now is that I work as a senior research fellow, as you can see, at one of the 88 Max Planck Institutes, which is a public funded research institute in Germany. The one that I work on or work for, it's Max Planck Institute for Innovation and Competition. And there, what I do, what I have been doing for the past 5-6 years, it's to focus on the crucial role that certain market incentives, such as intellectual property rights and market regulations, such as competition role, how do they play in driving innovation and also in creating more incentives to develop more inclusive, more ecological, sustainable, and more social responsible business models. And with that, I think it's time to open the floor, and I pass it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ali, Séin, Roxani, and Begoña. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's dive right in. And Séin, if I could start with you and pose you the first question. What would you consider to be the key challenges, but also the uncertainties that businesses and enterprises are facing at the second cusp of the 21st century?
Thanks, John Hans. Well, I think when we look at it, the first thing that kind of comes out at you when you look at the environment that businesses, employers, enterprises are assessing right now is the rapid pace of change. In many ways, I heard someone say once that the only constant right now is that there is change happening at an absolutely extraordinary rate in the labor market, in the economy, and around. And if we take it in two sides, both in terms of what's happening with regard to the proliferation of new technologies like AI that are transforming the nature of work as we know it. If we look at job titles that we have today, like data scientist or cybersecurity specialist, those jobs didn't exist or weren't even conceived of 20 years ago. And we can only begin to think that in 10 years' time or 15 years' time, new job titles will be advanced and new job titles will be there that we can't even conceive of now. And correspondingly, our education and training systems aren't necessarily able to specifically deliver for those types of jobs themselves. So that's the kind of the one sort of internal change that's happening to the labor market and the world of work. Then there's the external pressures, right? So you've already described quite eloquently the external pressure that faces us in terms of the new reality with regard to climate sustainability and climate action. But then also associated with that, which we're not going to go into today, is the kind of geopolitical uncertainty as well, and a lot of other kind of things that are against the backdrop that creates not only an uncertainty, but an incredible volatility where it makes it very difficult to actually forecast what will the shape of the economy or what will the shape of the global marketplace look like in a number of years' time. But I think one thing we can draw from it is that looking at the information that's available to us from the world of work, from the labor market, is that there are two transformations ongoing. One is the digital transformation and the other is the green transformation. And in both instances, they're being motivated by something different. So in the case of the digital transformation, that is very much being motivated by the absolute rapid change in technological advancement that we're seeing. And we're seeing the conversion. And, you know, in many cases, the fear that people have that their job is going to be, you know, automated out of existence, whereas actually the reality is more like that it will be augmented and that they will be able to focus more on the creative aspects of that role. But then on the other hand, with regard to the green sort of movement that we're seeing, this is something that is being driven by policymakers in the main and by the imperative that is needed to drive people to embed sustainability into the work that they're doing. And all of this comes together to underline the importance of foundational skills. So when we think about it, the ability to learn is probably going to be the most important skill that we set our students and our workforces up for success in the future. And the challenge for us in the policymaking community and across the wider piece is to embed digital foundational skills, but also now sustainability focused foundational skills as well, that allows them to embed sustainability into the decision making that they do. We can direct a movement towards a net zero carbon economy, but to do that, we have to equip the workforce with the sustainability skills to achieve that as well, to embed that culturally, to take advantage of this rapid pace of change that we're seeing in place. And businesses and enterprises will then have to incorporate and build out their workforce planning to reflect and to embrace that change as well.
Séin, thank you very much. May I just ask you to also comment on, because you mentioned the AI digital skills and of course the linking it to the geopolitical impacts. We have seen the rise of the right-wing conservative movements and the fear of the electorate who said, we are afraid that these different systems will take jobs away from us, and it has given a huge rise to populism. And how do you see the balance between the populism / geopolitical impact and the clear evidence that we need to move and embrace with more confidence the behavioral science and the human-centeredness of sustainability leadership? How do you see leadership, both political and business, embracing that with more confidence and more vision?
So I think we have to match. Someone once said to me that politics is about perception, economics is about reality. And what we've got at the moment is a mismatch behind what people perceive about the threat of AI, that they see it in terms of, especially if you're lower skilled or in a job that might be more susceptible to automation than another higher skilled job, but also then informing the reality that this is going to happen. So in many ways, not about sugarcoating the message that the train is leaving the station. We need to get on the train. We need to equip our education and training systems to get people onto the train. And here's where there's an opportunity, I think, for governments to really step up. We have a lot of work to do about embedding lifelong learning as an approach to our society and making adult learning something that is part of what we expect as citizens, what we expect as participants in the economy and in society as well. And that's where I think we can overcome that gap. The challenge that faces it is that those forces you describe of a much more reactionary, conservative, populist wave, they are moving quite fast. But we do see that when there is a strong centre present in the country where they do set out the facts and set out a plan, people despise uncertainty. They don't want uncertainty. They want to see a plan that will deliver for them and that will ultimately secure the standard of living that they've been used to. And that's where we need to make sure our education and training systems act hand in hand with employment and training agencies across the European Union and further afield to show that there is opportunities in these digital and green transformations that will lead to better paid jobs, that will lead to a better standard of living. And the evidence suggests that from those organizations or workers that have embraced the green economy, that there is a great future for them there. So it's about tackling that perception with fact-based reality and embedding that culture of welcoming an approach to lifelong learning, because this rapid pace of change is not going to stop, and nowhere in the history of the labour market has it stopped. And that, I think, is the thing that we need to prepare for and to engage with as well.
Thank you very much, Séin. Ali, please, I would like to turn to you, because we've just heard from Séin the elements of the human capital and the need to embrace more ongoing learning and development as individuals move through their careers. The question I would like to ask you then is, based on your experience within Ireland, how can sustainability leadership help guide organizations through this period of disruption, transition, and fear of embracing areas, tools, business environments, and skill sets that they are not familiar with? Ali.
Thanks. Yeah, I think those two words, disruption and transition are very and increasingly relevant. I think it's worth reminding us all the context in which we're trying to find this sustainability leadership and support it as quickly and as rapidly as we can. We're at a time where emissions continue to rise. We have the hottest year on record. We are continuing to burn fossil fuels at a scary rate, and we're not addressing the core issues. Shane talked about the need, for businesses, for policymakers, for society to have stability, to have clarity if we're going to have an orderly transition. But we have to be clear that right now that's not happening, and we are not seeing the leadership, and we are not seeing the commitment to give us a safe and just and livable future. So from this point, I think it's safe to say, because the climate will demand it, as you said earlier, that 1.5 limit is a material limit, and we're already seeing the very physical and visual impacts of climate breakdown, that there is no more business as usual. The climate will facilitate that. There is no more, I would argue, sustainability as usual. We need to see a real shift in what actually we define sustainable business as and sustainability leadership, and have it in a way that actually meets the moment and the scale of the challenge that we're facing. And there is no more leadership as usual. There's no jobs, there's no industries, there's no sectors on a dead planet. And I think it's fair to say that the leadership that has got us to this point has not served us well enough in terms of responding to the scale and the severity of the crisis. And again, just to be clear, this isn't a 20-year down the line issue. We are in the late stages of climate and biodiversity breakdown right now. So I think for businesses, when I started off, a lot of my work was around trying to convince leaders and businesses that this was important, that this should be on the agenda, sneaking myself into meetings to get it on the agenda. It's now changed because it's a very, like I say, material issue. Businesses are seeing it in their supply chains and their materials. Costs are very, very vulnerable. Availability of certain resources are very vulnerable. The transport of goods is becoming increasingly risky. We saw the droughts impacting key canal thoroughways. We have seen airports flooding and airplane issues as well, going from A to B, all of this in real time. We are seeing the rising issue of stranded assets. So looking at the reinsurance industry, for example, continued oil and gas expansion, continued financing of fossil fuels, all creating much more financial risk and stranded asset risk. That intersection, as Shane was talking about, between the growth of the digital era and the climate breakdown era is really, really interesting, because AI is extremely energy hungry. So how are we going to square that circle in terms of meeting our energy needs, making sure it's clean, and making sure it's equitable and fair, so it's acceptable to society, and that business can play a leading role in that. We're also seeing the growing risk of litigation. So we're in this new era of accountability when it comes to businesses and sustainability, and actually being held to account in a way they haven't been before. So, a few years ago, that was at sector level, then at individual business level. And actually in the last 18 months, we've seen the first cases taken against individual directors in companies for not preparing relevant climate transition plans. So it's all this pressure, I suppose, coming and making it more relevant and making it a little bit easier, at least to get the ear, to get leadership listening. But what we need now is to see leaders that have the skills and have the support to understand the scale of the multiple crises, and not just climate, but biodiversity, social as well, that understand that they are connected. We can't look at one without looking at the other. That understand that businesses can't just be looking at their operations and moving to renewable energy. They need to be speaking up, speaking out, pushing for ambitious policy, collaborating radically with their peers, breaking out of silos to work together in an emergency mode that reflects the emergency that we're in, and brave leadership. To me, sustainability leadership is courageous leadership, that it is brave enough to address those root causes of climate change that we talked about, to challenge some of the power dynamics as well that we don't like to talk about, but they're a core issue when it comes to what's delaying climate action right now. And also that's brave enough to lead a long-term vision that often you won't get to see the fruits of, which is quite a difficult thing when it comes to sustainability leadership, and a little bit different to traditional leadership. So yeah, we need sustainability leadership now to take its next step, to not be on the side of traditional business leadership, to really have that courage to demand clarity from policymakers about what's needed and those honest conversations, and leadership that is science informed, understands that we are working within limits now when it comes to business development, and is willing to not just make things a little bit better or a little less bad, but true transformation of business models that meet the new world we're living in.
Thank you so much, Ali. I would like to ask both of you, Ali and Roxani, the next question, because it creates a perfect pathway. Roxani, if I can ask you first to focus on the youth, and then I would like to loop back to you, Ali, to ask you to reflect on the answer of the question, but based in terms of what would be your message then to institutions of higher education to answer what are these crucial mindsets then and skills and strategies that sustainability leaders would need to cultivate and to navigate this landscape with grit and with confidence, and to look beyond the superficiality of corporate social responsibility and lofty greening marketing campaigns, but that it looks at something far more concrete. So Roxani, if we can ask you to share with us some of your work with the youth and some of the positives and challenges.
Sure. Maybe just to start with 3 key mindsets and strategies that have been important to my work at UNDP, and I see them well reflected in the MA program curriculum, which I'm very happy about. The first is systems thinking. It should be pretty clear to all of us by now that there's no development challenge that has a clear cause and effect chain, right? There's pretty much no challenge where we can say, this is the challenge, all we need to do is A, B, and C, and we'll fix it. We have some technological solutions. To give an example, we have some technological solutions to climate change that we know are effective in mitigating emissions, such as renewable energy technologies. We've had these solutions for a long time, but for those to take effect at scale, we need to affect change in political incentives. We need to unlock climate finance at scale. We need people to operate and maintain those renewable energy systems, and not just highly specialized engineers, which is what a lot of training focuses on, but all the people who will hold up the entire supply chain of a renewable energy system. And these are just a few of the other parts of the system that we need to work on for renewable energy solutions to achieve the kind of climate mitigation impact we need at this point. So in short, sustainable development practitioners need to be able to see the forest from the trees. What this has looked like at UNDP is that we're increasingly transitioning away from siloed interventions that just work on one part of, on each part of the system separately, to rather thinking about portfolios of interventions that are geared towards addressing a common North Star, or a Southern Cross for that matter. And that means collaboration. It means bringing together different teams, stakeholders to the table, and also as an organization aligning our workspaces, methods, processes, and competency frameworks to facilitate this. So traditional project management skills like knowing how to draft a logical framework with a linear theory of change, less and less relevant. What we need is collaboration and cross-disciplinarity. The second, very quickly, is behavioral approaches. And again, this is about stripping away this linear cause and effect thinking that assumes that humans are rational, and if we do A, people will automatically react in way B. We can spend all the time in the world raising people's awareness on how to recycle, but there might be a whole host of other factors that prevent them from recycling, except for awareness. It could be that recycling bins are just too far away from their homes. They may have heard from somebody that their country's recycling system is not actually effective, so they just don't see the point in recycling. So we need to embrace curiosity and experimentation to better understand what works, and also to better mitigate unexpected consequences of our interventions. The third is foresight. And here, of course, we don't just mean anticipating risks. Of course, we need to build out scenarios of what these different systemic risks might mean, but it also means designing and envisioning more resilient and desirable futures. I say multiple futures because because there can be no singular future, and designing not just for the needs of current generations. We've been using a range of foresight methods at country level, and participatory approaches are particularly important because sci-fi and technological visions of the future are spreading so fast through global mass media. We need people at local level to also be involved in designing their own narratives of the futures that they want. Just super briefly, I know I've taken a lot of time. When we look at youth-led solutions, what we look for to see if a young person's proposal, or if a young person is showcasing sustainability leadership is one, have they taken the time to understand the challenges facing their communities? So are they crafting solutions that are customized to their context and not just transplanting an innovation they've seen somewhere else? And this can mean also looking to the past, so to indigenous practices and nature-based solutions. A second green flag is that they articulate impact across multiple sustainable development indicators. So beyond just environmental sustainability, they can see the linkages to job creation, to education, to health, to other outcomes, and they prioritize the needs of those furthest behind. And they understand that they can't go it alone. They know that they need to work with partners and stakeholders. I'll wrap up here. Regardless of whether the solutions we receive are awarded or not with funding, those who take the time to apply to our call for solutions are united by the most important mindset of all, which is that they hold hope and they feel a sense of agency. They don't just wait for others to make the changes they hope to see in their communities.
Thank you very much, Roxani. System thinking, behavioral approach, and foresight, and sharing that common purpose. If I may ask Ali, please, your answers, your reflection in terms of these mindset, skills, and strategies for businesses.
Sure, yeah, and echoing a lot of Roxani said. So yeah, definitely systems thinking, that ability to see the bigger picture. That empathy piece is really important. So empathy, but what is the actual issue and what is the actual root cause? And if we think, for example, around electric vehicles, and in the past it might have been a solution to shift from an ICE vehicle, a fossil fuel vehicle, to an EV, that was the solution. But now we know EVs are proliferating, they're getting bigger in size, they're taking more public space. So what is the actual solution there in terms of mobility that is in line with planetary limits and social gain as well? So the empathy piece is huge. I would also say in mindset, we do need to quickly move to emergency mindsets approach when it comes to climate breakdown. Again, I'll say we're in the late stages of the climate crisis, and yes, we have to hold that tension between planning long term, but reacting now in terms of getting emissions down and getting climate under control, which is going to ask a lot of leaders. And I'm really impressed, I suppose, by the holisticness of what's on offer in this course in terms of building up some of those skills and that ability to hold that tension. With the strategies in this space, again, we've moved on from standalone sustainability strategies to now climate transition plans with details of how businesses, industry sectors are going to get this done. Not their goals, not their targets, but how. How is it going to be funded? What is it going to be achieved? And what can be achieved in the near term, in the next 5 years? So we're not depending on technology post 2030, that we're not depending on markets that don't yet exist around offsets and credits, but delivers emission reductions right now that gives us the stability to explore other technologies in 2030, which we're not on the path to just yet. And then in terms of skills, these roles require such a diverse suite of skills, and there's no one good mix or makeup that makes a sustainability leader. But that ability to weave, to collaborate, to convene, I think is increasingly important. And again, one thing that really impressed me about this course is self-resilience. The self-sustainability as a leader could not be more important. It is a very odd tension to be working in a space that is hugely rewarding in terms of giving your career and giving your time to try and make things better, all the while watching the stresses on our climate get increasingly worse at the moment. So that ability to take stock and keep yourself in the game and invest in self-sustainability is huge and not often addressed in courses. So hugely impressed to see it on this curriculum, and think it's something others should take a lead from.
Thank you so much, Roxani and Ali. Begoña, if I may come to you with the last question, and that is, how do you see organizations' role, responsibility to foster a culture of sustainability, adaptability, and resilience, but from the C-suite down to the front line?
Well, I think, can you hear me? Yes. Good. I mean, I think a lot has been said already about that, and I think it's important to place people at the center, and that might sound in kind of in contradiction with what we have all around. So over this hour, I have heard a lot, and I share that too, of what it's also been coined as polycrisis, this rapid change, this need to transition to the climate crisis, but we have wars jumping here and the geopolitical movements here, so this lack of certainty. But we still have a market system that is based on price. I haven't heard the word price up to now, and I think that's key. Everything is based on price setting so far. And for businesses, they need to come with profits. And we talk about technology, sure, and emerging technologies, indeed. But we should not forget that there are some ideologies coming from Silicon Valley that are a bit dangerous when we think about sustainability. And not again, Silicon Valley or anyone else. But when we talk about technological solutionism, to me, that's a bit kind of, okay, red flag. What is this about? Because as someone already said, and I think it was Ali, technology, it's a tool. And also Roxani emphasized that skills, people, education, put culture at the center, make sure that technology is the solution, and don't create from in the organization even. I mean, you can see, and I think also Séin mentioned that we have a new amount of roles, new jobs, new job descriptions, new job roles. But I will also like a word of caution, or be careful with that. Because if we look back, as Roxani said, what has happened in indigenous communities, what we can learn from the past, I mean, sustainability and ecological sustainability and climate, yes, it's super important. It's becoming to this digital and climate transition, this twin transition. But we can also find references to that in texts from the medieval ages. So it's been with us forever.
Begoña has frozen. I am going to, we have a couple of minutes, and I am going to Begoña.
Frozen? Yes.
Well, you're back. Please continue.
I know. No, I mean, I don't know where you lost it, but my internet connection is unstable now. This is Murphy's Law. I'm sorry.
We can hear you fine now, Begoña.
Okay. No, so it happens. Just want to emphasize that I think what this program brings different from other programs that I have seen, and what other perspectives that I have seen, is that sometimes we don't need to reinvent the toolbox. We have a lot already here. We just need to use it properly in the direction that we need, as you said, and as the United Nations Secretary General said, 1.5 Celsius degrees, it's not a goal, it's the limit. So we need to stop thinking of or rechange our mindset also from organizational point of view, and think about, okay, how can we change our business models, and how can we change my organizational mindset, my people, so we're not just focusing on pricing or on price setting. How can we compete differently? How can we look at the whole ecosystem also, even if it's from a systemic point of view, differently? how can we move into, I think it's Acemoglu, Darwin Acemoglu said in one of his latest books, how can we foster change in business models that go also in line with democratic values? And I think that's one of the key takeaways for me. And I think this is what makes this master program special.
Thank you very much, Begoña. Ladies and gentlemen, those of you that are connected, please feel free to pop in the chat box any questions, because we're going to open the floor now to answer some of your questions.
Thank you, Jonas. We were already collecting some questions and some answers over the Q&A box. And before we also leave, or why, as Jonas suggested, while we brainstorm some questions you might have to our panelists, I might, since some of you asked already, to give you some highlights on the scholarship opportunities. It might be important to have in mind. Indeed, we have a few scholarships available for this program. We are really committed to making education accessible, and we are offering 2 partial scholarships, each providing a 50% reduction in the student fees, which can be really helpful. There are certain requirements in place for the scholarships I'm just mentioning that you can see summarized there in the slide, but I might highlight just for you in any case. In order for you to apply to the scholarship, there's the requirement of first applying and be accepted in our program. Once you go through the admissions process and are accepted, you can then apply for these 2 scholarships that will be awarded based on diversity requirements or elements, inclusion, and academic merit. You can find more information at our website. Our colleague Anna was sharing this with you throughout the chats. You have the links at different times. So this is one important aspect to refer. We are also available, the entire team, to support you. And we are happy also to let you know that our colleagues will share an Excel document and we'll make available some slots during this week and next week with some of us at the program team to meet with you and to clarify any questions that you might have about the program, just discuss with us any reflections you might have or other questions that pop into your minds in the meantime. So the program team wants to meet you, and we really hope that you apply to this important and relevant program. I think our colleagues here in the panel highlighted some of the features there and that align with the changes that are needed and the skills and roles that are imposed by a changing world. Lifelong learning was mentioning, and foresight, all these important changes and frameworks that are also taking place in terms of adaptation at the United Nations level. So so you'll find them there, just to reassure you. I would really encourage you to sign up for the Masters in Global Sustainability Leadership that is offered by the Technological University of Dublin and in partnership with us at UNITAR. I think it's important to stress it again that our goal is really to equip you with the knowledge, but also the skills that are needed to live in a sustainable future, and we know we need it. So before I thank you once again for your time, and our experts, our moderator, my colleague Stu that supported in the organization of the webinar, we have some minutes. So I wanted to ask if there are any questions to our panelists or to our moderator even. Indeed, there were some reflections on Jonan's side as well, so feel free to ask. I think there was an interesting comment from Anna Cecilia, which is one of our participants today that I'll share with you, all John Hans and also the experts, that says how to implement strategies with national institutions can work towards a holistic, multidisciplinary approach to climate change and effectively communicate with communities to prevent social conflict. So this link also with social conflict. This is one of the most harsh problems in the global South countries. For encourage active engagement and participation from local communities in climate change decision-making processes. John Hans, would you like to distribute the questions? Should we open it to our panelists? Is there anyone
I would just like to answer it from our perspective. The United Nations Institute for Training and Research and the Technological University of Dublin, we are all in, because we believe that working to build trust with communities, with businesses, to find solutions and to inspire cooperation that our world so desperately needs in this specific area. And now is the time for us to mobilize. Now is the time to act. Now is the time to deliver. I would say this is the moment of the truth. And this is where this program is really able to provide so many of those insights, so many of those elements that can be used to build trust and to inspire cooperation, because we also need to look at it is not just the predatory economic model, but you heard so many of my colleagues talking about the behavioral science perspective and the citizen science element, where it's so important that we also embrace traditional leadership and insights from traditional communities in how we can find solutions that can be upscaled, and based on that, we look forward. And I hand to you back, Alexandra, if you wish to engage any of the panelists, which I'm sure have really inspiring reflections on this question. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, John, and also for sharing the perspective as from the program team point of view, which I think is, again, an additional thing to consider when you're thinking about joining our program. We are all in, as John said, do count with us. So the colleagues in the panel, is there any of you that you will? Yes, Roxani, maybe I'll start with you.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, I just wanted to highlight that so UNDP works with governments around the world on their policy commitments to the Paris Agreement, and this is a crucial time for civil society to influence those, because they're under revision ahead of next year's COP in Brazil. For youth in particular, we've developed a checklist for policymakers on how to better engage youth in the design and implementation of these policy commitments, which are called nationally determined contributions. I'll share the link in the chat so that you can have a look. It can also be of inspiration to those of you who are not youth anymore, but might want to find ways to get involved in these processes through your governments.
Thank you, Roxani. Colleagues, Ali, Shane, Begoña, any other extra thoughts on this reflection from Anna Cecilia? Ali?
I'll just add really quickly, just to build on Roxani's points, that, who gets to create these strategies and who's impacted by them is really emerging as well, in terms of who's at the table and who hasn't been to date. So kind of really reshaping how that's done in terms of that co-creation piece I mentioned earlier, and it's not a top-down approach. It just hasn't worked and will not work. And like was mentioned, with the NDCs, there's so much stuff happening internationally, vital, critical conversations and decisions being made at the moment that can seem too far away from us to engage with, or too difficult or too complex. And a really good foundation and introduction to those pieces will be provided in this course, and that kind of literacy is really important for different sectors, different regions around the world, to understand what decisions are being made on behalf of who and what that means for them. And some of the key issues would be around loss and damage and climate finance, for example, accountability piece between global north and global south. And, you know, if we are talking about a just transition, what is justice when we think about climate transition and historical responsibility, and who is going to finance the billions that are needed? So those scary issues, if you're not involved with them, you know, being given the tools to be able to navigate, to find out more, to understand how to contact those that are making those decisions are really important tools for anybody interested in driving change, and also really good enablers of making sure more people are part of those conversations, particularly those most impacted, and unfortunately those that have most often been left out of the conversation should now be center of those conversations.
Many thanks for these final thoughts, Ali. Begoña and Séin, would you like as either add something to this reflection very quickly as we are on time, or just to end with a final note?
I jump in quickly if that's all right. Just in terms of people thinking about their career and the foundation that this program can give people for their career. There's 3 I's I'd have at the back of your mind: impact, innovation, and interdisciplinarity. The impact is very clear. We know people are looking for purpose. As Ali's outlined quite eloquently, there is no greater purpose right now where we are in this crisis at the moment. With regard to innovation, we are going to need people to be able to look at organizations and move fast to meet these sustainability goals. And then the interdisciplinarity piece, I think, is what's going to be key. Bringing people with us to move at that pace is going to be key to that. So they will be the 3 I's that I advise people to have in the back of their mind as they look towards a career in this field.
Many thanks, Séin. Begoña, any final thoughts?
Yeah, just one final thought. I mean, I think it's, I know that this master program, so it's about leadership. And I think when we're talking about leadership, we tend to think about businesses, but it's not just about businesses, especially not in these times. It's about civil organizations, it's about civil society, it's about leaders that we will need also to step up in public institutions, in administrations, bringing up this message, because it won't happen if people don't step up. I can tell you that. It won't happen if we don't step up. And for that, it's important to understand all these set of skills, how to foster the change, how to look into this mindful innovation, if we can call it that way, you know, and how to bring value to that, not just hype and empty words, no, that we can see everywhere.
Brilliant. Many thanks, Begoña. Before we really need to say goodbye, that would be hard. It's been such an interesting session. Our colleague Séin from TU Dublin is also here. Séin, is there something very important that I forgot to add?
I don't think so, Alexandra. It strikes me every time I attend one of these talks that as well as work with these programs, I really would like to take this program, and I'm always inspired by the sessions and the speakers that we have. So thank you everyone for your perspectives today. It's been very interesting, and we very much look forward to seeing some of you in the program from September.
Thank you, Séin. So on my side, as the host, I'll do the final goodbyes. I guess you'll see a slide there. There's a date. So there's dates for the things. We are overwhelmed and excited with the applications, expressions of interest we are receiving for the program. So we really encourage you to apply if you are interested. As a final point, I'm sharing the feelings of my colleague Séin. I always want to say more, and it's very interesting for me to note, and I'll perhaps say goodbye with these 2 notes. Firstly, that contrarily to many of these online sessions, we see attendees joining and staying and increasing throughout the session, not leaving. What a huge testimonial to the quality of our panel and our moderation, and also very rewarding from the program team side that, of course, we put a lot of intention and work into organizing the series. This is the first thing. And then just to say that even if we are going to launch our program, so it's something that we'll be launching in September, we already are a community, and I hope this transpired throughout the session as well. We as colleagues and with the different experts, and this is, even if this was not one of the main goals, this is a bit of the flavor and the spirit, philosophy of what this program tries to embed. And as some of our colleagues just said, collaboration, joint projects, partnership for the goals, which is really needed if we really think about it. So I'm always touched and very happy and fulfilled to be able to contribute in a small way. And I hope to see many of you in the fall in the program. And I thank you really, Ali, Roxani, Séin, Begoña, for your time, for wanting to share with our small community here, and to our esteemed audience as well. Thank you, John Hans, for the moderation and insightful thoughts. It's a true pleasure to work with everyone. And the last thank you goes to our comms support, Anna, and also the other program team colleagues, Emma and Kieran. Many thanks, everyone. Well, the program team wishes you all a very great week, and we'll be in touch with different emails and checking up on you. Do not forget to get in touch if you'd like to have a session with one of the program team members. We are here for you, and happy week. Thank you, everyone.